Before we begin our story, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more, and drop a comment with your feedback on our stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The stars over Calisto did not twinkle that night. They hung like frozen embers in the endless black, a silent glacial reminder that light in this sector had long lost its vitality. The shimmering debris field, a chaotic graveyard marking the final moments of Callisto Station, distorted their glow into eerie halos. In the viewports of the MNS Valkyrie, the frozen corpses of lost souls tumbled silently past, faces contorted in expressions of pure, primal terror, mouths agape in final screams, eyes bulging as if having beheld something utterly incomprehensible. Commander Rylan Voss had witnessed many horrors in space. He'd seen the slow, agonizing asphyxiation brought by sudden decompression, and the fiery cremation of those hit by plasma breaches, each a moment that etched regret and determination in his mind. Yet none of these rivaled the dread evoked by watching dead eyes stare blankly back at him from the eternal darkness. "Play it again," Rylan ordered with a gravelly tone, his voice echoing in the cramped bridge of the Valkyrie. The stale smell of long-cooled coffee mixed with nervous sweat. His weary eyes never left the viewing screen. Lieutenant Hannah Dre, whose dark curls spilled over her shoulders and whose hands danced nimbly over her console, answered his call. "Commander, are you sure this isn't just some pulsar interference?" she asked, attempting to mask her unease. Rylan shook his head. "No. This isn't natural. The signal. It's structured," he said softly. The distress transmission pulsed with deliberate rhythm, a call not only of desperation but of warning. Then the transmission changed. A sound erupted from the speakers, a guttural, shrieking noise distorted by static and something indescribable. It was a wet, gurgling quality that made even Ensign Cale Oren's hands tremble on the tactical station. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Callisto Research Station, we're under static, not human." "They're not." A scream, then a sound like metal being torn apart. "Gods, the walls are." The transmission was cut abruptly, leaving only the metallic echo of its final seconds. A chill crawled up Rylan's spine. He remembered the Europa atrocity vividly, the day Martian Marines breached the Belter habitation domes and the air had turned to ice in screams that haunted him ever since. "Commander," Hannah said quietly, her Belter accent intensifying with tension, "sensors show the station's main reactor is cold, but I'm picking up residual neutrino spikes that don't match any known drive signatures." Rylan leaned over the tactical display and studied the pattern of wreckage. There was no orderly dispersal from a mere containment breach. The pattern was erratic, as though the station had been torn apart from the inside. And there, drifting amid the debris like a predator stalking its prey, was a ship. Not an ordinary vessel, it was beautiful in a twisted way, like a spider's web spun from the darkness, sleek and obsidian, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Faint pulsing bioluminescence ran beneath its surface in hypnotic veins of blue fire, shifting and reforming as if trying to tell a story. "Jesus Christ," breathed Chief Engineer Oscar Wren, his earthborn vowels soft against his rough voice, "that isn't a Union design. That ship isn't even human." Cale's eyes widened. The young Martian, face pale and freckled, whispered, "Commander, I'm reading. I think it's alive." Rylan's combat instincts screamed at him to retreat, to nuke the site from orbit and never look back. But duty, and a relentless desire for answers, compelled him. Prep the boarding team. Full hazard protocols. I want everyone in Class 10 encounter suits with independent oxygen. We're going in, he declared, his voice low and resolute. As the boarding team suited up, Hannah caught Ryland's arm. Even through the thick fabric of his combat suit, she could feel the tension in his grip. You saw the bodies out there, she murmured, her eyes dark with worry. Whatever killed them, it wasn't conventional explosives or weapons fire. Ryland checked the charge on his plasma cutter, a relic from earlier conflicts that still worked splendidly. Then we'll be filing a report on something new. And so will history, he replied, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The boarding tunnel was a narrow, spitting conduit between the safety of the Valkyrie and the unknown. The airlock hissed open, a sound that seemed to mock them with its inevitability. As the team emerged into the corridor of the derelict ship, a putrid stench, unlike anything sterile and metal, greeted them. It was a smell organic and rotten, a scent reminiscent of a dead whale's carcass on a Martian training exercise, swollen with decay. Rather than metallic panels, the corridor walls were smooth, ribbed, and strangely moist, textures that mimicked the inside of some enormous creature's throat. Bioluminescent nodules pulsed slowly along the walls, casting shifting blue shadows that danced unsettlingly. The floor, too, was unearthly, it gave slightly underfoot, springy like the grave relief of soft cartilage. Ensign Kale, ever the curious one despite his trembling hands, reached out to touch a wall. "It's warm," he began, but before he could finish, the surface rippled like disturbed water. Black tendrils lashed out, snaking around his wrist with lightning speed. He screamed as the suit alarm blared, a shrill, hopeless warning as those tendrils attacked reinforced polymer as if it were paper. Ryland snatched his plasma cutter and fired a blue-white beam that seared through the tendrils with surgical precision, causing them to fall and writhe before they dissolved into acrid smoke. The suit filters wailed in protest, a cacophony of mechanical distress that underscored their dire predicament. And then, the ship woke. The walls convulsed as if stirred by an unseen, malevolent heartbeat. The bioluminescent patterns flared to life, resolving into symbols burning themselves into the vision of every border, angular, twisting glyphs that seemed to squirm away when the eye tried to focus too long. Dr. Elias Vaughn, the linguist attached to the mission, staggered backward, blood trickling from his nose through the confines of his helmet. It's not just writing," he gasped, voice quivering with a mix of awe and terror. "It's alive. It's trying to talk to us." Before anyone could reply, a quiet tone, a sound that bypassed ears altogether by imprinting itself directly into their minds, filled them. It was no sound but an indelible impression, a blanket of presence that said, in unerring clarity, "We see you." Ryland's vision blurred as images exploded into his consciousness, a black planet orbiting a dying star, vast mechanical constructs buried beneath layers of ancient ice, and a pulsing signal reaching far across millennia. This was no warning. It was a lure. And then, a horrifying chorus began, screams not from his team but emanating from within the ship's flesh-like corridors. The voices of the dead, the desperate echoes of the distress call, repeated in an interminable loop of agony. Back on the bridge of the MNS Valkyrie, alarms erupted. The chief comm officer's face, etched in lines of worry and urgency, filled the main screen. Admiral Kira Dax's composed features were now clamped in panic. "Voss, aboard immediately. The Union's fleet just hit Ganymede Station with those same ships. Earth Command is screaming this is a Martian false flag operation." Her words flickered and dissolved into static, the transmission fragmented by the chaos that now gripped the universe. Meanwhile, the derelict ship's organic corridors began closing in around the borders like a giant esophagus swallowing its meal. Hannah grabbed Ryland's arm angrily, her grip relentless. "We need to go. Now." Ryland, with no time to debate further, ordered the team to turn back and race for the airlock. Amid the chaos, Ensign Kale's infected arm, already mottled black by the corrosive tendrils, slumped in his harness. His labored breaths came in wet, ragged gasps over the comm, his voice barely audible. "Commander, it showed me. Europa. The refugee camp. It remembers what we did there. It remembers everything." Before he could finish, a shape dropped from the corridor's ceiling, a creature the size of a man, yet moving with a liquid, otherworldly grace. Its dozen segmented limbs skittered along the walls and ceiling, distorting the organic plating with impossible speed. Hannah's pistol barked 3 times as plasma rounds lashed out. They tore into the creature's carapace, but it pressed forward relentlessly. In that critical moment, Marcus Holt, the hulking chief of security, plowed into the creature with the fury of a man with nothing left to lose. His combat knife flashed as he slashed the thing's thorax open. The creature shrieked, a sound that bypassed the ears and vibrated directly inside their skulls, its ichor spraying in deadly rivulets. "Move!" Marcus bellowed. The team sprinted for the airlock, barely escaping as the corridor sealed behind them. Through the viewport, Ryland watched the derelict ship twist and contort, its geometry warping in ways that defied rationality, until it finally vanished into a pinpoint of perfect blackness. Seconds later, frantic reports flooded the comms, multiple contacts emerging from Callisto's shadow. Same signatures, hundreds of them. Hannah's voice, now tight with controlled panic, relayed the information. Ryland's stomach churned. The Union had not built these nightmare ships, they had awakened them. And now, the entire solar system was in the grip of an unimaginable horror. On the bridge, silence fell except for the steadily dripping sound of Kale's blood on the deck plating. The young ensign slumped in his harness, his infected arm now a harbinger of decay, the veins stark against his pallid skin. As the tactical display flared with hundreds of black ships emerging from Callisto's ruins, strange constructs that moved with erratic, physics-defying grace, Earth's fleet scrambled into formation, Mars locked its orbital defenses, and the belt burned in the chaos of desperate resistance. "We can't fight that," Marcus growled, his voice trembling between fury and raw terror. The seasoned veteran's eyes betrayed a vulnerability rarely seen in his battle-hardened gaze. Hannah's fingers flew over her console as she analyzed the streams of data from deep space. "We might not have to fight it," she said with a glimmer of cunning. "Remember the signal from Io, the gateway. Earth Command was terrified of it. What if it's not a weapon at all, but a door?" Dr. Vaughn, who had seen too much to doubt nothing ever came easily, coughed, blood misting his visor. "It's a door," he whispered, the weight of his words sinking in. Ryland's gut twisted as the unbidden visions from the derelict ship poured back. The black planet, the ancient machines encased in ice, the pulsing signal, all merged into a singular, disquieting revelation. They stood at the threshold of a passage to the unknown. "Then we open it," he said slowly, the words bitter on his tongue. "We find out what it wants." The Valkyrie limped toward Io's sulphurous atmosphere, its battered hull groaning like a wounded beast. Below, Io's scarred surface spread out in ruins of long-forgotten cities, spires twisting at impossible angles, remnants of civilizations that had dared to dream. At the planet's heart pulsed the gateway, a structure etched with the same alien glyphs they'd witnessed aboard the derelict. It hummed, laden with energy and mystery. Ensign Cale gasped as the shuttle descended. His infected arm pulsed with unnatural blue light. "They're singing," he managed to say, voice distorted by pain and revelation. "Can't you hear them? They just want to go home." Hannah's grip on his shoulder tightened. "Stay with us, kid." But in Ryland's eyes, and on Marcus's grizzled face, was the unmistakable truth that something fundamental had shifted in Cale. Whatever he had been before, he was no longer the same. The boarding ramp of the Valkyrie met the alien platform, a cathedral of otherworldly design where the very ground seemed to breathe. Their boots sank slightly into the yielding surface, a mixture of soft, mucus-like substance and flexible, living tissue. The air vibrated with raw power, and the distant echoes of voices, faint, desperate, and mournful, seemed to beckon them closer. Then, without warning, the sky tore open. A Union dreadnought descended through Io's thin, sulphurous atmosphere, flanked closely by a dozen of those nightmare ships they'd seen before, artifacts of a cosmic horror now awakened. The dreadnought's comms crackled with panicked voices. "You don't understand what you're doing, boss. That gateway, it isn't meant for us." Ryland, steady even as terror clawed at his insides, ignored the dissenting voices. "Dr. Vaughn, activate it." The linguist's hands trembled over the array of alien controls. He hesitated, swallowing hard. "This language, it isn't just a set of instructions. It's a bargain," he murmured, barely audible over the hum of the reactors. Hannah's head snapped up in alarm. "What kind of bargain?" she demanded, knowing that in these moments every word could tip the scales between salvation and oblivion. Vaughn's voice quavered as he replied, "A trade. We open this gateway, and we give them something. I can't be sure what yet." The gateway flared with a sound like reality itself tearing apart, an insidious vortex of black light spiraling open before them. On the other side, they glimpsed not a mere ship nor a fleet, but a god. A presence so vast and ancient that it crushed their minds under its immense weight. The Union dreadnought's hull convulsed as its organic layers withered as if frozen by an unearthly frost, and its crew, once human, now reduced to screaming, formless flesh, vanished in seconds. Cale staggered forward, the corruption in his body now overt and horrifyingly visible. They just wanted to go home," he choked out before his voice was overrun by the alien artifact's dreadful incantation. His mouth began to move in a chorus of dead tongues. "You called. We answered. Now pay the price." Ryland's eyes widened in painful realization. The Union had awoken something that had lain entombed beneath ice for millennia, something exiled and forgotten, but now it hungered to reclaim its place in this reality. And it would do so at the dire cost of those who dared to open the door. Hannah's voice was frantic. "We can't let it through." Marcus Holt hefted his rifle. "Then we blow the damn thing up," he roared. But Vaughn, trembling yet resolute, shook his head. "It's too late. The gateway is open. There is only one way to close it, one sacrifice. We must offer a mind to seal the door." Ryland's heart pounded as he looked into Hannah's eyes. In that silent exchange, they both understood what must be done, even if nobody wanted to be the one to pay that price. Hannah moved swiftly. Without hesitation, she shoved Cale aside and lunged toward the glyph panel embedded in the alien architecture. Her hands burned as she began to carve the final sigil, the one that Dr. Vaughn had refused to speak aloud out of terror. "No!" The artifact screamed through Cale's ravaged lips. But Hannah did not falter. A grim, determined smile played on her face as she spat between gritted teeth, "Tell your gods the belt sends its regards." With one final exertion, the glyphs glowed incandescent, and light erupted in an ear-splitting crescendo. The gateway screamed, its vortex flaring bright as reality collapsed inward, and in that blinding flash, the last thing Ryland saw was Hannah Dre's silhouette against the void, stepping forward into nothingness as the ancient horror was dragged back into the blackness from which it had been called. In the aftermath, the Union ships around them imploded, the scarred sky slowly healing as Io's oppressive silence returned. But the cost weighed heavily on every soul aboard the Valkyrie. 3 months passed in the uneasy calm that followed the collapse of the gateway. On the observation deck of the Valkyrie, Commander Ryland Voss stood alone, staring into the velvet black of space. The official reports on Earth called the phenomenon a contained plasma anomaly. While Earth and Mars had since signed a shaky armistice, the resourceful belt, scarred by loss yet unbowed, had finally declared its hard-won freedom. Yet, even in this tentative peace, the void whispered of loss. Hannah Dre was now gone. No body had been recovered, no wreckage found, only a single, fading signal on deep-range scanners. A whisper in the dark, in a voice not quite her own, echoed over comms, "I see you." Ryland exhaled slowly, a bitter mixture of relief and resignation rising in his chest. Somewhere out there, beyond the quiet stars, the war was far from finished. But for now, the cosmos lay hushed, and in that silence, the memory of sacrifice glowed as fiercely as any star. Back aboard the Union dreadnought, a cold, sprawling vessel scarred by battle, Ryland locked eyes with the battered remnants of his crew. In hushed corridors lit by the dim pulse of emergency lights, the survivors recalled the terrible night of Hannah's sacrifice. Over carbuncled stanchions and through whispers that carried the ghosts of lost comrades, they asked, could one act of valor really alter the course of cosmic destiny? In quiet moments, Ryland haunted the memory of Hannah Dre. Born on the fringe worlds, Hannah had grown up in the rugged, unforgiving environs of the belt. Her trade had been survival, a life forged amid asteroid mines and makeshift settlements. Yet Hannah had always dreamed of something more. Beneath the hardened exterior and the steely resolve was a soul that believed in honor and the possibility of peace. As she stepped into the alien abyss that night, her sacrifice was not mere duty, it was redemption, a final message from the belt and its defiant spirit. Back on Earth, political debates raged. Union officials insisted that Hannah's sacrifice had been the necessary toll to contain a threat older than time itself. Martian admirals, haunted by memories of battles past, argued that the war had been awakened by false flags and cosmic manipulations. Deep in the Senate chambers, heated accusations flew as high-ranking officers and politicians blamed one another for the unspeakable horror unleashed that night. The internal strife only deepened as revelations surfaced, whispers of corrupted intel, of rogue factions within the command system, and of forbidden experiments with alien biotechnology. Among the loyal, a young officer named Cale Oren, formerly a promising science cadet before his fateful encounter on Calisto, struggled with guilt and trauma. His body bore the marks of corruption now turning his flesh black, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw the vision of Hannah's sacrifice and his own encounter with the living ship. In therapy sessions held in virtual reality bunkers, he recounted his nightmares to a stoic counselor, detailing every horrifying tendril that had wrapped around his wrist, every scream that had echoed in his memory. In those quiet sessions, Cale began to understand that he was not just a casualty of war but also a bearer of its darkest truths, a living testament that sometimes one must suffer to awaken. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Oscar Wren and his second-in-command, Lieutenant Karavex, who had once dreamed of exploring uncharted worlds before war had grounded their ambitions, worked tirelessly to decode the ancient glyphs and the alien language embedded within the ship's walls. Each rune and pulsating symbol revealed hints of a long-forgotten civilization, a culture that had once communed with cosmic gods and traded in the essence of life itself. Their research grew into a subplot of redemption. Perhaps understanding these alien messages could allow humanity not only to prevent further destruction but also to harness this knowledge for healing. Dr. Elias Vaughn, the linguist who had stumbled upon the sentient glyphs, found himself racked with guilt. He remembered a time when he studied languages to bridge the gap between diverse cultures. Now, his work had unintentionally summoned a power that threatened to unravel the very fabric of reality. Haunted by voices and visions, Elias spent sleepless nights poring over ancient texts and alien data archives, seeking redemption that might justify an unintentional role in the horrors now unleashed. In the months following the catastrophe at Io, Union and Martian fleets scrambled to rebuild, while deep within the belt, a new alliance began to take shape, one that would forever be known as the Remnant. Comprised of survivors, disillusioned soldiers, rogue scientists, and even exiled pirates, the Remnant represented a coalition built on shared loss and a burning desire to reshape the galaxy's fate. At clandestine meetings held on battered platforms like Erebus Station, a drifting relic patched together from the remnants of war, leaders and visionaries gathered. Here, past enmities slowly dissolved as old enemies found common ground. In one such meeting, Commander Rylan addressed a ragged assembly, his voice resonating with quiet authority. "We have seen our world torn asunder by powers we never imagined. We have lost family, friends, and the hope we once dared to nurture. But we have also learned that our strength lies not in the weapons we wield, but in our willingness to rise even when all seems lost. Today, we choose to rebuild, a future not defined by vengeance, but by unity and resilience." Among those present was Cale Oren, now slowly recovering from his injuries and determined to use his near-immortal visions for a greater good. And beside him, a new generation of Belters, hardened by loss yet incandescent with hope, pledged their loyalty to the idea that the Belt could be free, not governed by old alliances and outdated hate. Even Dr. Vaughn, once burdened with the weight of his unintended summons, stepped forward with newfound resolve. The glyphs we deciphered point to a civilization that understood sacrifice and rebirth, he explained. Perhaps by engaging with these ancient languages, by truly understanding the bargain forced upon us, we might unlock a way to not only contain these forces but harness them for peace. Their combined efforts forged a delicate tapestry of newfound purpose, a rebellion of the remnants determined to challenge the old hierarchies and hidden cabals that had manipulated war for their own dark ends. Yet as the strands of rebellion wove tighter, new threats emerged. Deep in the void beyond Io, a Union dreadnought descended, a hulking behemoth flanked by a dozen nightmare ships. Its comms crackled with panicked dissent. "You don't understand what you're doing, boss. That gateway isn't for us," the transmission pleaded, voices thick with desperation and fear. But Rylan, with memories of loss pressing down on him, ignored the pleas. Dr. Vaughn, activated, he ordered even as his heart pounded with foreboding dread. Vaughn's trembling hands hovered over the alien controls. "This language, it's not only instructions. It's a bargain," he murmured with horror. "A trade, perhaps." Hannah's eyes widened. "What kind of bargain?" she demanded urgently. Vaughn swallowed hard. "It appears that by opening the gateway, we call forth a price, and that price is a sacrifice from within our ranks." The alien gateway flared violently, its energy tearing at the fabric of reality. A vortex of black light spiraled open, and through that marble darkness stood not another ship, but a god. Its presence was immense, a cold, vast intelligence older than the stars themselves. The dreadnought's hull convulsed as if frozen in frost, and its crew, those proud warriors who had once defended humanity, were reduced to screaming, formless masses of flesh within seconds. Cale staggered forward as his body began to disintegrate at the molecular level, his corrupted veins glowing an unholy blue. "They just wanted to go home," he choked out, his voice a blend of terror and revelation, as the artifact's voice used him, a chorus of dead tongues echoing, "You called. We answered. Now pay the price." Ryland's eyes widened in the face of this cosmic betrayal. The Union, in its desperate bid to open the gateway, had awakened an ancient terror, one that had slumbered beneath the ice of forgotten worlds. Something exiled and hungry, demanding passage into their reality, and demanding sacrifice. Determination warring with dread, Hannah took hold. "We can't let it through," she insisted. Marcus Holt hefted his rifle in a defiant roar, "Then we'll blow the damn thing up." But Vaughn's shaking head stopped them. "It's too late," he said. "The gateway's open. There is only one way to close it, a sacrifice. Someone must offer their mind to seal the door." In the silent communion of that fateful moment, Rylan and Hannah exchanged a look that spoke beyond words. Hannah moved decisively. With trembling yet resolute strength, she shoved Cale aside and lunged toward the control glyphs embedded in the alien architecture. Her hands burned as she carved the final sigil, a sequence that Dr. Vaughn had long been too terrified to complete aloud. A primal scream burst from the artifact, an otherworldly cry that echoed through Kale's dying body. No! It shrieked, as if the ancient being itself protested. Hannah's lips curled into a defiant grin amid tears of determination and blood dripping from her nose. "Tell your gods the belt sends its regards," she cried out. A torrent of brilliant, destructive light erupted from the glyphs as the gateway screamed in agony, a sound that shattered reality and tore through the hull of existence. In that cataclysmic instant, Hannah Dre stepped into the void. The last image imprinted on Ryland's eyes was her silhouette, arms spread wide against the collapsing chaos, severing the unholy connection and drawing the ancient horror back into the abyss. The Union ships, in a final act of cosmic retribution, imploded as though their very essence was being drawn into nothingness. Slowly, the sky over Io began to heal, and a terrible silence fell, a lull after the storm of cosmic defiance. 3 months passed like an eternity. On the Valkyrie's observation deck, Commander Ryland Voss stared out at a starfield that now seemed to whisper of regret and hope alike. Official reports provided ambiguous cover stories, contained plasma anomaly, while Earth and Mars signed a fragile armistice. The belt, scarred but unbroken, had finally achieved a semblance of freedom. Yet amid this relative calm, the void still spoke. Hannah Dre was missing, no body, no wreckage remained. Deep-range scanners had picked up only a fading signal, a single, haunting whisper in a voice not quite her own, "I see you." For Ryland, those words were both a benediction and a curse, a reminder that even sacrifice could not truly silence the echoes of war. Somewhere in the infinite dark, the struggle was far from over. But at that moment, the stars above Calisto were quiet once again. In the months that followed the Gateway incident, the survivors of the cataclysm forged a new alliance. The shattered remnants of the Union fleets, Martian orbital installations, and exiled Belters came together under a banner they called the Remnant. Their aim was not only to resist the lingering terrors but to rebuild a society that prioritized unity and understanding over blind warfare. At Erebus Station, a skeletal space outpost cobbled together from the wreckage of lost civilizations, leaders and refugees gathered. Here, amidst the flickering neon of rebuilt corridors and the sound of determined hearts beating as one, a memorial was dedicated to those lost, to Hannah Dre, to every victim of the ancient terror, and to the countless souls sacrificed in the name of survival. Commander Ryland Voss addressed the assembly with a measured, trembling voice. "Our scars remind us of what we've endured, but they also mark the path that led us to a choice to rise, to heal, and to build a future where such nightmares never again come to pass." Among the gathered was Cale Oren, a young Martian who had been transformed by his brush with the monstrous. Scarred in body and spirit, he now spoke openly about his visions and his grief, urging others to learn from the past. "We were once pawns in a game we never chose," he said, voice low and resolute. "Now, our future is ours to define." Dr. Elias Vaughn, whose knowledge had awakened both horror and hope, offered new understanding of the alien glyphs. "These symbols," he explained to an awed crowd, "are not merely instructions. They are the language of an ancient covenant, a deal struck with forces far older than our own. We must respect that knowledge if we are to live in harmony with the cosmos. As the assembly continued, a flicker of light emerged through a communicator, a final, cryptic transmission from the depths of space, echoing the Valkyrie's final moments. The devourers can be hurt. Tell the others. Keep running. Keep fighting. That message, half-forgotten yet eternally inscribed in every survivor's heart, became a new rallying cry, a promise that even in the darkest void, hope could be kindled anew. In the ensuing years, the remnant's resolve forged a new direction for humanity and its exiles. In clandestine meetings on reclaimed space stations and during bold sorties into uncharted territories, former adversaries found themselves working side by side, united by a desire to prevent the horrors of the past from ever returning. Commander Rylan Voss, though forever changed by loss, emerged as a guiding force. Late one starry night, looking out over a shimmering nebula from the Valkyrie's refurbished observation dome, he revisited an old journal where he had once written, "We choose freedom, not the freedom born of perpetual war, but the freedom to dream, to heal, and to live without the shadow of tyranny. For every shattered horizon lies the promise of a new dawn." Lieutenant Commander Valerie Kane oversaw training programs for new recruits from the belt and beyond. In modernized training yards, where holographic simulations now depicted the terror of the Gateway and the sacrifice of Hanadre, she taught not only combat but also the art of reconciliation and leadership. "Our past wounds may never fully close," she would say, "but together we can forge a future where empathy guides our strength." Meanwhile, Dr. Elias Vaughn led an interdisciplinary team to decode more of the alien language, a language that might one day lead to the peaceful integration of ancient cosmic wisdom into human civilization. His work, once overshadowed by guilt, became a symbol of hope, a bridge between the scientific and the spiritual, unlocking secrets that lay buried in the fabric of the cosmos. In secret corridors of rebellion, former Union officers like Marcus Holt shared stories of sacrifice and courage. Even Cale Oren, whose body was still marked by the corruption of that fateful encounter, emerged as a living symbol of resilience. "I have seen the face of cosmic terror," he confessed at a public forum, "and I choose to believe that even in that terror, the human spirit can shine brightly." Finally, the galaxy itself began to heal. Earth and Mars embarked on a new chapter of cooperation. The Belt, free and resolute, nurtured innovative communities that marveled at the lessons learned from conflict. The memory of Hanadre, her sacrifice echoing in every act of courage, became a legend told and retold, inspiring generations to stand firm in defense of life and liberty. One quiet morning, many years after the cataclysm, Commander Rylan Voss stood on the outer observation deck of a restored Valkyrie, now a museum ship, a shrine to those lost and a beacon of hope for those yet to come. The stars shone gently overhead, not as cold embers but as delicate promises of new beginnings. A soft signal flickered on his personal communicator, a whisper in a voice that carried both mystery and melancholy, "I see you." Rylan smiled faintly, a tear glinting in his tired eyes. Somewhere deep in the endless void, the ancient forces might still stir, and unseen battles might yet be fought. But in that moment, with the universe alive with infinite possibility, he knew that hope was the most potent weapon of all. For now, the stars were quiet, and beneath their gentle light, a new dawn had begun, a dawn born of sacrifice, fortified by unity, and destined to carry the legacy of those who had dared to fight for freedom.